Ladies and gentlemen, this is Darcy Ogandaga, CEO of Trillium Media. Today's interview that I will present to you with the CEO of OM, international organization, when it's really focused on mission, to me is the most powerful interview I ever done. It topped my all 700 videos I produced for myself and different clients all around the world in different markets, in the French and English and Spanish market. Because what he's talking about is very dear to my heart, is the way to really prepare the church to go to the marketplace. The marketplace, that's where everything is happening. So what you will hear in this interview will really challenge your mindset, really challenge your tradition, really challenge your religion, really challenge the wrong belief that you have about ministry. And it's really going to free you up and to understand that serving the Lord is not a death sentence, or where you cannot really do what you used to do, but where you have to suffer and when you have to sacrifice all the time. Yes, there's a level of sacrifice, but not like the way some teachers of the Bible portray what it is to go on a mission field, overseas, and be able to help the people who are less fortunate that you are. There's a way to really not really change, but to amplify the gospel of Jesus Christ into a methodology who's really matching the culture and the society globally to where we are now as human beings in a society. To be able to relate, Jesus was not about religion, it was about relationship. So if you cannot be in a position where you can relate to another human being regardless of their background, you fail to represent Jesus properly. And this is really what this interview is about. And I'm telling you, it was short for me. I wish I can do 3 hours. I hope that I can do a part 2 of that interview, because it's so crucial, so important for us to understand that be able to amplify the message of love and restoration. That's what Jesus came about, is to amplify the love and restore what had been stolen from us, our true identity in Christ. And when you understand that, you don't see colors no more, you don't see tradition no more. All you see is love, and your language is compassion. And when you can understand those two elements in life, you can talk to people from a different faith, from a different race, from a different background, and you're always going to be able to communicate with them because you're full of love and compassion. And this is what this interview is about. It's just to take, whatever blinders that you used to have in your mind or in front of your eyes, to let you see the pure form from the passion of this man of God when it comes to what does it take to be able to reach the heart of the nations for Jesus Christ. So let's watch this interview and make sure that, take your pen and everything that you have, your iPad, your phone, to record, to take notes, and make sure that you just suck everything out of this interview, because I'm telling you some good stuff. This is Darcy Ogandaga from Trillium Media. Let's watch this powerful interview. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Darcy Ogandaga, CEO of Trillium Media and DarcyOgandaga.com. And today I'm so honored to have with me Andrew. We will talk about his vision and how he will impact the unreached. So Andrew, thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, Darcy. Yeah.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah.
So can you tell our audience a little bit about who you are and what your organization is about?
Great. Well, as you already mentioned, my name is Andrew Scott, which is a Scottish-sounding name, but I'm actually from Northern Ireland, which is just across the water from Scotland. But grew up in a Christian home where my parents not only taught me about God, but taught me and my siblings about missionary patriarchs and men and women who gave their life for the sake of the gospel in places like Africa, India. So William Carey, Adoniram Judson, Mary Slessor, wonderful people that just stepped out in faith to follow God, to bring the gospel to the unreached. And these people, we didn't have a TV in our home. So they would read these stories on an evening with us around the fireplace, and these people became our heroes as young kids. And in our hearts and minds, missions became something that was part of life. And my brother was in what we call full-time Christian ministry, although I don't like that term. He's now a pastor. And my two sisters both have been very involved in missions and continue to support it this day.
I like that introduction from North Ireland.
Yeah.
I'd like to say most of our audience live in the United States. So can you locate where is Ireland? I probably don't know where it is.
Yeah, some people describe Ireland as an island off the coast of Europe or east of America. I like to describe America as an island off the west coast of Ireland. Ireland is an island on the western part of Europe, and Northern Ireland specifically is part of the United Kingdom, ruled by the British government, and of course that's been a bit contentious over the last few centuries, but today there's a relative amount of peace in country, which is good.
Like that, a few years ago I had the opportunity to travel to London a couple of times, and actually I spent a month in Brighton.
Okay.
In southern England.
Yeah.
So I'm very familiar with
the United Kingdom. Good.
Exactly. So can you tell me a little bit more about OM, what it stands for, and what is the mission?
Yeah, OM, Operation Mobilization, is we're about 57 years old now, founded by a man called George Verwer, who was from America, and in his teens came to know Jesus. He was a very rough-living but entrepreneurial young man who had a number of businesses going, and an old lady prayed for him on his way to school. Every day he would walk past her window, she would see him, she knew he was a ringleader of trouble in the school, and so she would pray for him, and she sent a John's Gospel to him. He read that, went to a Billy Graham crusade, got saved, and very quickly found out that many people in the world had never heard of Jesus one time, and that broke his heart. And so as a teenager, he felt called of God to do something about that. He started by going down to Mexico, taking a few of his friends, selling their belongings, buying literature, giving literature out in Mexico, starting a bookshop, in a Christian bookshop in Mexico, back in the days when nobody was going to Mexico. Then moving to Europe, and in a tree, after being kicked out of Russia for getting caught sharing the gospel in Russia, back before when the Iron Curtain existed, he sensed that God was calling him. In the midst of that failure, he sensed that God was calling him to be part of an awakening that would see a mass movement of people towards the unreached. So he got the name Operation Mobilization, just a massive operation of mobilizing students, primarily young people. When all other mission agencies were looking at seminary degreed individuals to go reach the world, George said, well, if the 1.5 billion people in the world have never heard of Jesus one time, why do you need a seminary degree to tell them about Jesus? Wow. Let's get the young people who love Jesus, let's get them out in the streets of Europe with a bag of literature, giving out literature and sharing their faith. In his second year in Europe, 2,000 young people joined him, mostly from the UK at that stage, and it grew from there. And he was driven by this idea, how can we get the gospel to these 1.5 billion people? Surely they should hear it at least once in their lifetime. And that vision drove him to do some incredible things. Back in those days, OM was focused on the unreached, still is today, but hallmarked by mindsets like no risk was too great, no idea was too crazy, no innovation too wacky. That was just let's do whatever it takes to get. And so when people were saying it was long-term mission was the only way to do it, he started short-term mission when nobody else was doing it. When he was trucking literature to India from Europe, he said, hey, it would be much easier to do this if we had a ship. The missions world wrote him off, said, he was in his 20s at this day, right?
Wow.
Missionaries shouldn't own ships. He bought a ship, got a ship. God raised people up to give money. And we've had 4 ships over the lifetime of our organization. We have one called the Logos Hope today, taking the gospel into the port cities of the world. Literally every year, 1 million people come up the gangway and they'll hear the gospel. And many for the first time, When people said the communist world was closed, he said, well, let's build minivans with retrofitted insides, and we smuggled Christian literature into the communist world during the 70s and 80s. So no idea was too crazy, no risk was too great. And everybody, if you love Jesus, let's go do it. And so that was OM. We were birthed like that. Today, OM has evolved. All of those things, I believe, are still in existence. So that's our mindset, and we're continuing to say, in today's world, how do we bring the gospel? It's no longer 1.5 billion, by the way. It's 2.2 billion, and that number is growing by 57,000 every day. People in the world who have never heard of Jesus once.
It's growing
every day. By 57,000 people. So we're going backwards in a time when the church has more people, more money, and more technology than it ever had before. And yet, the one commission that Jesus left us with, we're going backwards in.
And you see, this is why I want to interview with you so much, because that's my mission too. I always, the way I got, saved, in the 90s, used to listen to a lot of hip hop.
Right.
And when I came to the United States, I said, when I heard first about Biggie and Tupac, I started to hear about Billy Graham and somebody else.
Yeah.
And I said that because the media was not thinking that it was enough to reach, but the corporation were owned by certain media company, they found a way to find us everywhere. And I always been telling folks that we are not as popular as we think. There's still a lot of people who don't know about Jesus.
That's right.
And we have to use every voice available to tell them that Jesus is Lord. But today, society, we are in 2015, in fall 2015. What do you think that practically Christian can do to reach more people?
That's a great question. Because obviously we're not doing very well at it, and I think you touched on what I believe is the critical point, Darcy. That the society is doing a better job at getting their message out than the church is. Right? We understand that. We also understand that as a result of that, and population explosion being the way it is, the gospel effort is not keeping up with that. What I believe is the biggest mistake. Well, let me not be that definitive. One of the big mistakes that the church has made is that we have basically over certainly in the last 50 years, but probably in the last 200 to 300 years, post-Enlightenment, even post-Reformation, is that we have withdrawn slowly but surely from society, and so. The church has become a place where people come together to gather on a Sunday to worship. And we've defined worship by singing primarily, and then we tag on the preaching. And that's what the church has become known for. We build bigger and bigger buildings. As an outsider to the US, I'm now a citizen, but I have spent a lot of my life looking into this country. If I was to even ask you, what has the American church become famous for? It's their mega churches. They're big places of worship. And if you look in the Bible, this story of the Tower of Babel, God gave one mandate to creation. He said, "Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and govern it." Mm-hmm. Right? He had created, the pinnacle of his creation was humanity. Humanity was the purpose of creation. Ephesians 1, Paul tells us that before God even put an atom in place, before he laid the foundations of the earth, he loved us, he adopted us, he made us holy in his sight. So before God even put all of this together, he thought of a people that he wanted for himself. That was his purpose. And so he made all of this here for us to exist. And to cut a long story short and encapsulate it in a couple of phrases, his purpose for creating the universe with this ball called Earth in the middle of it was to create an environment for a people to exist that would share in his glory. He didn't need more glory. He didn't need a bunch of people to give him more glory. He had all of the glory he needed. So he created us to share in his glory, but also to share his glory. Okay? So even the Son came to earth to do the will of the Father so that he would bring the Father glory. The Spirit came to earth to do what the Son would tell him to do. Jesus says in John 17, and through that bring him glory. So as part of the people of God, made in his image, adopted into his family, surely we, in having that relationship with him, would have the role that the rest of the family had, and that was do the will of the Father and bring him glory. So God puts humanity on the earth, and he said, okay, I've made you in my image, I want you to be in relationship with me, and I've given you a role. Now go be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth. In other words, go make more of these people that reflect who I am, who will be in relationship with me, who will share in my glory and share my glory around the earth, until the whole earth is filled with these people. And of course the wheels come off it, and God was so upset, he was going to press reset. And he found one man who was being faithful, Noah. And you know the rest of the story. He built a boat, flood. At the end, when Noah came off the boat, God turned to Noah, and here he is. He's the guy, the person who's reflecting his glory and goodness on the earth. And he said, now go be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. To Noah. And he... off Noah went, and then we come to the Tower of Babel, and this is where I was getting to. In the Tower of Babel, it says that then the people found a great plain, and they decided to settle. Well, what did God tell them to do? Multiply, be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. The people were deciding to settle. And what did they decide to do in that big plain when they were settling, build a city? They wanted to build a big tower, which was a place of worship, a ziggurat, a big tall place of worship. And why we will build it, and we will become famous for it. They were going to become famous for their place of worship. And God said, let us go down. That was the second. The let us was happened when let us make man in our own image. Now it's let us go down and confuse their languages. Why? So that they will scatter throughout the earth. Because his intent was that they would be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. And he went down and he scattered them. I feel today that we as the American church have become famous for the wrong thing. We've become famous for our places of worship, the places where people come to gather and settle. And God has designed the church to be a place where we come to gather and scatter. And we see it in the New Testament very, very clearly. Jesus didn't say be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. He put it a different way, but it means the same thing. Go and make disciples of all nations. It's fruitfulness, multiplication. That's what discipleship's all about. All nations. God's heart has never changed. And yet when we look at what happened to the early disciples, they stayed. And then God, in his sovereignty, came down and he scattered them through persecution. All throughout Scripture, God scattered his people. Either because they just moved away from a relationship, or they weren't fulfilling their role. But he scattered them. And so whenever I think of where the church is at today, we need to change from being a place where we gather and settle and become a place where we gather, where we're equipped to do the work of the ministry and scatter and go do it into the businesses, into the places of art, into the medical profession, into the politics. We need to get back into society.
The seven mountains.
The seven mountains, absolutely.
And this is what I've been talking about for a long time. You cannot change the world in 4 hours of gathering a week. It's impossible.
Spot on.
On a natural, we don't even need to pray about it. When we add, the number of hours is not working. This is why it's so important. But what we're going to do, we're going to take a little pause. We're going to come back with some more. So thank you so much, Andrew. It was so powerful. Thank you so much. I mean, I'm telling you, you couldn't hear, in between the clips. But what we're about to talk about today and now, you already heard a few minutes before that. But Andrew will now let us know what is now his actual plan to create more disciples. And so, Andrew, can you share a little bit more about how you're going to execute?
Well, we have we've had a missions model that for about 170 years, the modern mission, what we call the modern missions movement. Well, actually, the first part of that was very good. Then the last 50 years, we've moved into what we call a dependency model, where we raise support the missions model traditionally is you leave your job, go do something else overseas that doesn't look like your job, and you raise support to do it. And in the context of what we just talked about, we're saying, you know what? Before the foundation of the earth, God thought of what he wanted you to do, and he made you accordingly in your mother's womb fearfully and wonderfully to do that. Paul says in Ephesians 2:10, we're God's workmanship created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which he prepared in advance for us to do. In the context of chapter 1, that is before the foundation of the earth. So that's incredible to think about, that before God made the earth, he thought of what he wanted you, Darcy, to do, and then he made sure that when you were being knit together in your mother's womb, you were being knit together fearfully and wonderfully. In fact, a masterpiece in God's eyes, to do exactly what he wanted you to do. And the key then is to know, how has God made you? What are the gifts he's... Well, let's forget gifts for a minute. What are the passions that he's put in you? What are you passionate about? What are you good at? The talents he's given you, the abilities. What's the personality that he's given you? And then what are the experiences? And when you come to Christ, then what are the gifts he's given you? And all of those things he's given you. Why? Because he wants you to share his glory among the nations. So I see myself, I'm a Christian who happens to be a doctor, a businessman, whatever the case may be. And our primary purpose, you see, I don't believe you're called to the purposes of God. I believe you're made for the purposes of God.
Can you break it down? Between the difference like made and called.
Okay. Called, the way we look at called is that I need a special calling from God before I will do anything for God. I will just get on with my normal life. I'll go to work. I'll go to church. I'll get involved in some sort of ministry in church. And then I've been taught to believe that if God really wants me involved in ministry, he will give me a specific call to take me out of that world and into this new world, to go do full-time ministry. That's why I said before I don't like the term full-time ministry. Because it connotes that some people's life is full-time involved in the purposes of God, and then the rest of you are not. God only put us on this planet for one reason and one reason alone. And that was, and they say, it sounds like two things, but it's only one thing. And that was to share and that was for the purposes of his glory. To share his glory, in his glory, and to share his glory. That's what I was made for. But yet he has given some people a passion and an ability as an engineer. Why would he have given somebody the passion and ability as an engineer to then ask him to give it up to go do something different? Do you think God did he make a mistake? Did he change his mind? Absolutely not. He gave him those things to be used for his purposes among the nations. Now, God is never tied into anything. He's bigger than that. So that there are times where God moves people out, and sometimes it doesn't even seem logical. So God's sovereign, he can do that. But I think for the vast majority of people, if we simply understood how God made me, my abilities, my gifts, my personality, my passions, the experiences my vocational experience, my educational experiences, my life experiences, and go live out my life in that context, then I believe that's living out the strength of who God has made me to be. And I believe that we will have less burnout in ministry because we're doing what we love to do. And that's not a personal thing. I love it because God made me like that, and I'm living out the way God made me. And so when we roll that all out, when you ask me how are we going to make more disciples, I want to change the missions model from asking people, leave what you're doing, go do something else, and raise support to do it. Because there's a lid in that. In the whole history of mission, modern mission movement, we have never gotten above 1% of the body of Christ involved in this idea of full-time Christian ministry. That model's not going to work. In fact, it's not working. We're going backwards. I want to go after the 99% who are saying, the missions model you're describing in the past doesn't fit me.
I love that.
I want to go after that 99% and say, you're an engineer, you're a good engineer, you love being an engineer. Go be an engineer where God's not worshipped.
That's what I'm talking about. Say it again. You see, guys, this is why it's so important. This is why I create this type of place where we can talk about this type of topic, to open your mind to another option. Not that what we are doing is not good, to go more in details and to find out and address the big pink elephant in the room. To address that, okay, we've been doing something for 50, 100 years and it's not working. And we keep doing it because we think that it's coming from God. When God gives us some eyes and a mind to think, so you know what? Let's readjust it. Readjust everything. We change the color of our cars, of our house, but now we don't want to change the way we go about preaching the gospel. And what Andrew just, detailed and let us know that there's a new way of mission.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why it's so important. And like you said, like be an engineer, because based on that fear, now you try to take somebody and make him uncomfortable and tell him that's the will of God.
Yeah.
And if the God that we have is a God of love, how he can make you uncomfortable to teach you something? You will not do that to your children. So why God will do that to us? So can you go and really give more examples?
Yeah. Sure. And I think to your point, Darcy, that I think the church, and I've been part of this, I was a pastor for a period of my life before I came into this role, and I think what we have perpetuated is because we have an unchanging message, sometimes we think our methodology shouldn't change. And we have to separate that out. It has to always change. And I would say also want to make sure that people are clear in this, that I think there always will be a place for support raising what we call missionaries today, although we need to get rid of that term too. People who raise their own support to go overseas to fulfill certain roles. But it's not sustainable. And in many places it's not even missiologically correct. For example, we and I have to be careful where I mention here, but we have workers in a certain part of the world where they told us that there's some other ladies that are ministering in this town, and the local people confided in our team saying those ladies are either prostitutes or spies. They're missionaries, but they're either prostitutes or spies. Why? Because they don't go to work. They sit in coffee shops and talk to people, and they take photographs. So they're either prostitute. That's what the local. So we're losing that because people living in society see it through that lens. So how do we hope to reach into their world by staying separate from their world?
But you see, this is why. Because I have the answer of that. I'm part of the answer. This is why I'm doing this. And our friend, Vivian Camera, knows the story. I create a course that I will release named Before You Come to America. But the part 2 is Before You Leave America. Because the thing is that until you understand the culture or where you're going, you can be there and still not connected with people.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of people like you and I who came here from Europe, and I came from Europe and Africa. But the only reason for us to be able to be part of a society, we have to understand the American culture and to know our position in place. And most people, they do the opposite. When they come here, they try to still, I still want to be French. I want to eat a certain way. And you know the type of tea, the same taste, the bread. So now I'm looking for somebody who can make the tea like back in London. Or Belfast. It's not going to happen because you are not in Belfast. You're not in London. You're not in Paris. You're not in Lagos. You're not in Libreville. You are in Atlanta or New York. So now you have to adapt yourself. And I believe one of the things, and then a quick story here, somebody went to Cameroon 4 or 5 years ago. I was trying to go with him to help him. He said, no, that's not a problem. I've been to Ireland. It's going to be the same thing. He came back and apologized like 5 times a day for 1 month. I said, you don't have to do that. Because he wasn't ready for the culture shock. And somebody told him that everybody speaks English worldwide. He was surprised and come on, speak French. And the part where he was. So it's all these type of things that additional information and additional training and teaching from a cultural point of view, it will help people when we do missionaries. And like I was telling a few months ago on my program, that Americans used to go and evangelize. And for the last 5 years, now it's people coming from overseas to come to re-evangelize because they already know the world. they come to reintroduce Jesus from overseas.
Yeah.
It's because of that lack of connection
Yeah.
that's happening worldwide. Not that North America is going bad or nothing like that. It's worldwide. It's just a shift happening worldwide.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think one of the stories that encapsulates what I'm talking about that's from the Bible, and then I'll give you a story of today, is the story of Daniel. I'm just captivated by Daniel, a young man who gets his transport ticket paid for him by the king of Babylon. Pretty rough, because he was taken in exile from Judah into Babylon. Because he was one of the brightest and best, he and his three friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, taken to Babylon, put in the best university in Babylon, paid for by the king, trained in matters of wisdom and the interpretation of dreams, best of everything. Daniel purposed in his heart during that university years that he would not defile himself with the king's food, and really that speaks to us of many of the aspects of the culture that were against his faith. Not all of them, but the things that were against his faith. He purposed in his heart, and he studied hard, worked hard, and Daniel understood his place as a follower of God in that nation. When his final examination came up, the king came in to personally examine the class, right? It's a final class examination. And it said that in matters of wisdom and in the interpretation of dreams, the king found that Daniel and his three friends were 10 times better than anybody else in the kingdom. And 10 times better. And so off he goes, and he gave Daniel a pretty good position in Babylon. Into chapter 2, the king has an issue. He had this bad dream, doesn't know what it means. All of his dream interpreters weren't able to tell him. So somebody tells him, hey, remember Daniel? Yeah, Daniel, bring Daniel in. Daniel tells him, I can't do it, but my God can help me. Daniel provides the interpretation of the dream. And after Daniel does that, he meets the need of the king. The king responds, thanks Daniel, and says, surely your God is greater than any God in the whole empire. And so, what an amazing thought. If we could see the best young men and women from America go into the nations of the world. Now, Babylon was the world empire in that time. And here's this young Jewish guy who purposed in his heart to follow God in the kingdom, living out his life for the glory of God. And he did it so well that the king said, you're 10 times better than anybody else in this whole kingdom at what you do. And he made Daniel eventually the governor of Babylon. And Daniel was the governor of that part of the world, of a world empire, for three different empires. For the Babylonian Empire, for the Medes and the Persians. He shone there for the glory and purposes of God, and changed the heart of each of those kings, as the Bible tells. Even King Darius, who threw him in the lion's den, remember? Yeah. And when Daniel was lifted out of the lion's den, Darius, the king of this world empire, worshipped God. What if we could release a generation of young people who saw that, first of all, they were followers of God, the reflection of His glory and goodness in this earth, only put here to share in His glory and share His glory, and would go and be engineers, doctors, businessmen and women, whatever God has equipped them to do. Go into the nations of the world where He's not worshipped, and do it as unto the Lord, as Paul tells us to do it, or do it all for the glory of God, as Paul tells us to do it. So much so that we are not working for an earthly master, we're working for God, and we're excellent at what we do because of that. And you know what happens when you do your job like that? People notice. Even the kings of world empires will notice. And they will come and they'll do what Peter told us to be prepared to do, and that was they will ask us to give a reason for the hope that lies within us.
Wow.
We have a lady live in a country which I can't mention, as a nurse. She went there 17 years ago, and she had an education background and a medical background. She just wanted to go to nurse among these people, Muslim background, in a Muslim country, and share the love of Jesus just through being a really good nurse. She said, I did it as unto the Lord. And they started to notice. They said, you're so good at what you do, would you teach our other nurses? She did, and all of the other nurses got better. And they said, hey, would you mind teaching all of our medical staff, our doctors, how you treat people with kindness and you do nursing. She did that. She kept getting promoted by her boss to the point where she reported directly to the CEO of this major hospital. She had so much freedom in a Muslim country doing her job that she could share her faith on a regular basis. She didn't have to hide it. She didn't have to shout it. She didn't have to go in covert ways to do it. She had so much freedom. She added so much value as a medical professional to the hospital. They gave her the freedom to be who God created her to be, and the faith. And she was having Bible studies. She's sharing her faith on a daily basis, saying, "You are so good at what you do. Tell us why that is." And she gets to share her faith. And I could tell you story after story about that, of how that's working. I was just talking to a pastor today who is a pastor of one of the largest churches in Russia. And he was telling me that his church was built simply because of this. He said, "It's not me. I have no connections in the community. I'm seen as this religious leader. It's my congregation who are businessmen and women, professionals, who are out there living out their life with excellence in the marketplace. People are asking them, 'Why are you different?' They're sharing their faith. People are coming to Christ. He's bringing them to the church. They're bringing them to the church, and they're growing in their faith. They're going out to do the same, and the church is growing rapidly." And it's not this, "Come and bring them in." It's the congregation are scattering every week into the marketplaces of that city, sharing their faith, and the church is growing. And we will never see the great complete, outside of an amazing work of God, which He can always do, but humanly speaking, we will not see the Great Commission completed until we change our model from delegating ministry to a few 1% of our people, and recognizing that every one of us has been put on this earth for God's purposes and God's purposes alone, and we should be living them out in the place that God plants us. Just as the early church scattered as businessmen and women into the marketplaces of the known world, and with them they took the gospel, and saw a pagan empire called Rome change in 300 years to calling itself a Christian empire. Can we once again see that happen in countries like Saudi Arabia, the Near East, Europe, that needs to be re-evangelized?
Yes.
It'll never be done by pastors and what we know as missionaries. It will be done by men and women who flood into the marketplaces of the world and live out their faith.
But you see, before I want to say something, and then I want you to let people know how they can reach out to you, your website, and the address of the organization, and how they can be partaking of your mission. When you read the Bible, guys, the people that we talk about, from Joseph to Abraham to Daniel to David, none of them are preachers.
That's right.
You don't realize, everybody you talk about, unless even the apostles.
The only time you read well, I'll not say the only time, mostly when you read about priests in the Bible, it's always about the dysfunction they had.
Always, yes. Because God don't want you to qualify yourself, but they want you to really go to the next level. So we will stop for a minute and then make sure that we're coming back, and Andrew will let you know how you can get in contact with him. Wow, I'm telling you, I've been producing for the last 5 years more than 700 videos and 280 webinars at the time of this recording. But we'll let you know that this interview, Andrew, is the interview made me the most happy.
Wow.
Because, somebody already told me that, when you're going to start talking to Andrew, you see you got so much similarities, because that people don't, sometimes like I'm talking and I feel like people don't get it. I said, you don't get it. Sunday is important. Wednesday is important. But the most important thing of those 2 days out of a week is what you're doing in between. How you represent Christ in your daily lives.
Absolutely.
And you have to make a difference in the marketplace. That's where Jesus needs to be. Not on Sunday and you talk for 3-4 hours in the parking lot. It's good because that's your friend, but you have to take that same passion to your marketplace, to a point where you transform everywhere you go. And this is how we're going to.
Jesus said, "Let your light so shine before men that they will see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven." A light should not be hidden under a bucket. It should be put on a hill, and we should be cities on a hill that are alight. To use just what you said there, the church has become a place. It's become the covering of the light. And we shine. We go into the church and we do all our worship thing, and we shine and we shine and we shine, and then we walk out into the world, and the world is not seeing that light because we think it's in here we shine. We do our thing in here, when our thing is to be done out here.
I just heard something, and that's so great. This is why I'm saying we are so free. When God talk about the church, He don't talk about the building. He talk about the kingdom.
Yeah.
The kingdom is a system who can adapt itself everywhere.
Absolutely.
And how people can partake with your vision. What is your website?
Yeah.
How they can contact your staff?
Yeah, great. Thank you for asking, Darcy. Yeah, omusa.org. M for mother, usa.org. And we would just go there and you'll see the links under Go, and you're more than welcome. I'm hoping actually to have a book released in the spring of the year. I didn't tell you about that, but that will share this whole story, and I can let you know when that's available. It'll not be available for another 6 months.
Okay, so great. So thank you so much, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Wow, Andrew Scott. This interview really blessed me so much. I'll be listening to it over and over again. Because of the time, we have to stop the interview. But like I said, he has a lot of stuff, coming up. You can check the website. You can check, really, he got a book coming out and different project that he's working on. So feel free to visit his website, send him an email, what you think about the interview, and make sure that you get involved in any kind of way that you can from their website, how you can help and participate for Andrew and his team to reach more people globally. So I hope that you enjoyed this interview. Thank you so much. This is Darcy Ogandaga, CEO of 300 Media, and I'll see you soon. Bye.